Hi guys, welcome back to NASA's Trend. Today we'll be learning how to make the sheep dress with bell sleeve. As you can see by the side, if it's something you're interested in knowing how to make, keep watching and let's get started. So I've gone ahead to fold my fabric into four. This simply because we'll be cutting the front and back together. All right. And I'm working with a fabric of 3 yards. So depending on your size and the length of the gown you want, it can be more or it can be less. So I've gone ahead to draw a line there, which is going to serve as my shoulder line and also my starting line. All right. So on that line there, I'm going to take half of my shoulder measurement. Okay. So half of my shoulder measurement is 7.5 inches. That's because my shoulder is 15 inches divided by 2. I have 7.5 inches. So I'll just go ahead and mark 7.5 inches there. So whatever your shoulder measurement is, go ahead and divide that by 2 so that you have half of your shoulder measurement. Okay, I hope you understand that. So I'm just going to mark this properly so you can see the lines. And the next thing I'm going to do from my center, I'm going to take my neck width, which is going to serve for both the front and the back. All right. After that, I'll go ahead and mark my neck depth. Now, like I said, I'll be cutting the front and back together. So I'll be applying the back neckline to this and also the front neckline. Okay. So for my back neck depth, I went down by 1.5 inch. And for the front, because it is a V neckline, okay, you can decide to make it deeper, like go down more, all right, whatever you desire. But for me, I marked 7.5 inches for my front neck depth. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use my rule to connect my points together, my neck width to the neck depth. So the first one I'm doing is to connect the back neck depth to the neck width I marked already. Okay, so you want to make use of a rule so that you have this accurately drawn. You don't have any mistakes at any point. All right. So I just went ahead to use my curve rule to connect this, and I also used my free hand to ensure my lines were showing properly. Then for the front neckline, I'm going to use my straight rule to make my connection. Since it's a V, the neckline is a V shape. It doesn't need a curved rule for this. All right. So I've gone ahead to make my connection. So like I said, you can decide to use a deeper neckline for yours, depending on what you want. Okay. So from the point where I marked my shoulder, point, I will be going down by 1 inches for my shoulder slope. Okay, this is because our shoulder is not straight, so we need this to give us a better fitting around that area. And I'm going to make my connection into the neckline. So I've gone ahead to do that. You can see how this looks like. So I want to go ahead and impute my vertical measurements. I'll be working with three major measurements at this point, which is my armhole point. Now to get your armhole, divide your round bust by 6 and then add 1.5 inch to whatever you get. That means divide the circumference of your round bust. Okay. So I went ahead to mark my armhole, which is 7. I marked my half length, which is my waist point, which is 16 inches. And I'm going ahead to mark my hip point. All right. So another measurement we need is also the full length of this dress. It is a very important measurement. Okay. So depending on the length you want yours to be, go ahead and take your measurement. Okay. So for me, I wanted my dress to be around 30 inches. Okay. Sorry, I wanted it to be around 28 inches by the time I finish hemming this down. So I went ahead to mark 30 inches as the full length of my dress, and I'm using my rule to rule a line across this so that it will be more visible. Okay. All right. So so on my armhole line, I'm going to take half of my shoulder measurement also, which is 7.5 inch. All right. Then I'm going to connect it to the top part of my line. That's the shoulder line I have at the top, so that I will have a straight line connecting both of them together. So the next thing I want to do is to take the measurement I have around there. So I'll know what I have exactly. I'll measure that down and then take the midpoint of what I have there. So I've done that. I've taken the midpoint of this. Okay. So we're going to be marking different armholes for this. Remember, we're cutting the front and back together. Okay. And I went ahead to mark quarter of my bust measurement. That's my round bust measurement. So for the back armhole, I'm just going to make a connection from the midpoint of the armhole down to the point where I marked my bust measurement. All right. So I hope you understand. If you don't just watch this closely so you understand. Okay. So I had some issues using the ruler because it was actually disturbing me at this point, but I had to bring it back because I needed this to be quite accurate while working in this. Okay, you can see that connection right there. That's where that stops. Now for the front armhole, I'll be going in at the midpoint by half of an inch. This is because the front armhole is a little deeper than the back, or the back armhole is bigger than the front. Okay, whatever way you want to look at it. And I'm going to make my connection like so. So you can see how this looks like. Okay, I hope you can see this clearly. You can see the difference between the front armhole and the back armhole. I'm just going to retrace my lines so that they are more visible to the eyes to see properly. Right, let me zoom this in so you get a better look of what I'm talking about. You can see this is what we have. All right, so this is our back armhole and this is for the front armhole. Okay, so I hope you understand that clearly. So let's continue with this. All right. So on the armhole line, I've already marked my a quarter of my bust line. That's circumference of my bust. I've already marked that. Okay. So since it's an A-line dress, we'll be adding allowances to this as well as adding our stitching allowances. Okay. I'll be adding different allowances for this. Okay. So for the armhole point, which is also serving as my bust point, I added 2 inches. Now 1 inch will be for ease and the other 1 inch will be for my stitching allowance. All right. At the waist point, I'm also going to take quarter of my waist, which is 7.5 inch. All right. I went ahead to mark that down. Want to ensure your tape is placed properly. And I will just take same measurement I have around the bust point. Okay, so I just took 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for stitching allowance. On the hip point, I marked my quarter of my hip circumference. But the difference for this is that I'll be using 2 inch for ease at the hip point and then adding 1 inch for stitching allowance. Okay, because I wanted the hip area to be more free. But if you want yours to be free, because I wanted the bust and the waist area to have a sort of fitting around that point. Okay, so I'm going to just replicate the measurement I have on my waist area, sorry, on my hip area on the full length of this. Okay, so if you want your A-line shape to be more, you can decide to extend the measurement you have on the full length of this dress. Okay, you can see, you can just decide to adjust your ruler so that you have the shape coming out, the A shape coming out more, if it's that's what you want for it to be more shaped around that area. Okay, but I'll just be using the same measurement I have around my hip area and just going ahead to make my connections at this point. So I'm going to use my curved rule to make my connection to from the hip area to the waist area. Okay, that's because this this area has a form of curve. You don't need a straight rule for this part. You need a curved rule so that it gives you that perfect curve around there. and I'll just connect this into the armhole area to get this. Okay. So this is what this looks like at the end of the day. If you want yours to be freer, it's just simply you adding more allowances to the needed points you want it to be free. Okay. So this is what we have at the end of the day. This is what it looks like. Okay. You can see on the shoulder area, I'm going to add half of an inch for the back. I want the back to be higher than the front by half of an inch. I went ahead to mark that down. I'm just going to make my connection from the neck width into that point. Okay, so the difference between the back and the front is the neckline. The shoulder area is increased by half of an inch, and then the armhole area, right? So I'll go ahead and cut this out because this is all the markings we need for this. Like I said, you can make yours longer, whatever makes you happy. You can decide to extend your A shape so that it is more out there if it's what you want. All right, so I'll just go ahead and cut this out. So what I'm doing is to cut out the front part of this first, okay, and then the back part of this, and then I took it out. After cutting it out, I took out the back, and then I'm going to place it back and then cut my front armhole and the front neckline. Now, this is simply because we have a different armhole for the front from our measurements and neckline for the front. Okay, so you want to ensure you don't make the mistake of cutting the both of them together. Okay, there should be differences between both of them. Okay, you can see how this looks like. Now for the mid part of this, where our band is going to sit, depending on you, you can decide to just split this into two, whatever you want. Okay, or you can decide to remove some like remove a certain inch from this. For me, I'm removing 1 inch from this because at the end of the day, I want my band in front to be 3 inches. Okay, that's 1.5 on both sides. But if you want your band to be bigger, or you want your dress to be freer, depending on the your band inch you want to add, okay, it determines what you're going to cut out from this front area, or if you just want to split it open and have it more free. I hope you got that. Okay, so I'm just going to cut this out properly so it looks neat. You can see this is what it looks like. I'm making a notch here to indicate where my neckline is going to stop. So this is what we have. The next thing I'm going to do is to bring in my back piece. I'm going to place the back and the front together, the front piece together, front facing front, so that I can go ahead and stitch down my shoulder points, my shoulder areas. All right, so I'll go ahead and stitch it down by half of an inch on both sides of this. So I've done that. This is what we have after doing this. You can see how this looks like. Okay, so for our band in front, I'll take the measurements round the front part of this. Now this is from one end to the other end. All right, so I'm simply going to take the measurement round this so that I can know the length of the band to cut. Okay, so go ahead and do the same for yours. Now you want to ensure you take this measurement. Okay, it is not a point where you guess and say, okay, it might be this, it might be that, so that you're not shortened. All right, and you want to ensure you cut extra, say 2 to 3 inches, okay, while you're cutting out your band. It's better to have excess than to have less. All right, so I went ahead to take the measurement round mine, and I had 90 inches by the end of the day. Okay, I've gone ahead to cut this out. Now, like I said earlier, I want the width of mine in front to be 3 inches by the time I finish stitching it down. So I went ahead to cut out a band of about 4 inches wide, and I folded half an inch on both sides of this. Okay, so after doing that, by the time I fold it into two, I will have 1.5 inch, okay, before I stitch it down. All right, so I hope you understand that. Depending on the width of the band you want, you can decide to cut it however you want it. Now, if you want your band to be bigger, go ahead and cut out a bigger width and then hem fold both ends of that. All right, so we'll go ahead and stitch the band around our dress. You can decide to stitch this like you usually band the skirt, the waist of our skirts. Okay, just stitch to one end and then flip over to the other end. All right, if that's easier for you to do. Okay, but we're going to do this. Okay, just watch what I'm doing carefully. Going to place the band, one part of it down, place half inch of our fabric inside of it, and then close it down with the other part of the band and go ahead and stitch it down. You want to be careful and patient while you're doing this. Okay, stitch it down closely at the edge of this. So I've gone ahead to do that. You can see this is how this looks like. So I want to stitch down the front. Remember, the front part of our cloth is not open, it's closed. So I'll go ahead and align this properly, ensuring I have equal parts. The shoulder areas are matching on this, okay? Because we're going to measure the front neckline before we go over and stitch this down. Okay, so from my shoulder point where I have my shoulder, remember I'm using 7.5 inch for my front neckline. So whatever inch you're using for yours, go ahead and mark it down at that point, and then go ahead and stitch it down by 1/4 inch. You don't need to exhaust too much. Okay, so I've done that. You can see how this looks like. This is the back of the fabric. It looks this way, and this is how the front looks like. Okay, I went ahead to press this properly so that it sits nice. Okay, so like I said, you can decide to make yours bigger if you want that, or make it smaller. Okay, for the sleeve, I've gone ahead to fold a piece of fabric into four because I'll be cutting the front and back together, and I've gone ahead to draft out this pattern. So I have a video, a well-detailed video on the channel of how to draft out a basic sleeve. I'll be dropping the link in the description box so you can go ahead and check that out if you've not seen it yet. Right? So I'll just go ahead and pin this down. Now, since this is a bell sleeve, if you want yours to be fuller, you can use the slash and spread method for yours so that it to be fuller. Okay, I didn't want mine to be on the big side because I'm not on the big side. I don't want to be looking for myself while I'm wearing this. Okay, so I didn't want that to be too big, okay, because my arm area are really not big. Okay, so I've gone ahead to pin this down. The first thing I want to do is to add my stitching allowance to this because I didn't add this. I didn't add while I was drafting this out. Now you can decide to make your sleeve longer. Okay, I advise make it longer. I think it will look more good if it's longer. So I just went ahead to mark out my extra. Okay, so for my bell effect, I'm going to be adding extra inches to this. Okay, so depending on the quantity of fabric you have and depending on how full you want this area to be, since it's around, this part is around the wrist area, sorry, just go ahead and add your numbers to it. Okay, so my initial measurement, because my paper is folded into two, was 4. I just went ahead and added 12 inches extra to that. Okay, so I'm adding an extra 1 inch for stitching allowance at this point because I have not added, and I'll just make my connection from that end to the other end of my fabric that I've already marked down. So I'm just retracing this line so they're more visible. Okay, so you can see this is how this looks like. I'm just going ahead to cut this out. Now, like I said, you can make yours longer if you want it to be longer. You can also make yours fuller. Now, I'm a believer of whatever works for you or whatever you want. Okay, so I'll go ahead and unpin my pattern paper so we can get a better view of our sleeve. So you can see this is what the sleeve looks like. Okay, so it works better. You can use it this way, it works better this way, whatever works for you. Okay, but from the closed end of this, I'll be going up by 2 inch. Right, this is because I wanted my sleeve to have a little more character, so to say, and I'll be making a slanted line from that point to the edge of this. Okay, so I'm simply just slanting 2 inch from the closed end of my sleeve to the other end. So you can decide to make yours like mine if you like it. I'm sure you're going to like it. Or you can decide to just leave it this way. It works this way. It works this other way I'm doing it. All right. So I'll just go ahead and take off the excess from this because I'll not be needing this. So now our sleeve is ready. I'm just going to make a notch at this point to indicate the midpoint of my sleeve. You can see. So the next thing I want to do is to attach the sleeve to the main clothes. Okay. So what I'll do firstly is to hem the edge of my sleeve. I'll just pick it up. Remember, I added 1 inch for hemming allowance. So I will just hem this by folding half of an inch first and then folding another half of an inch. Okay, folding it down. And then after doing that, I'll bring in my clothes, place it the midpoint of my sleeve to my shoulder point. Ensure they are matching properly. You want to ensure they're matching properly. That's the essence of making a notch at the midpoint of the sleeve, okay, so that they are matching properly. Okay, then after pinning down, I'll just go ahead and stitch on both sides. Right, repeat the same thing for the other part of the sleeve. So I've done that. You can see this is the part where I hemmed, and this is the area where I've joined my sleeve together. All right, so I'll go ahead and flip this to the back so we can join the sides of our dress together. Now you can decide to add pockets for this if you want to, but I didn't want to add any pockets for this. Okay, so I'll place my fabric this way, ensure the ends are matching, everywhere is matching perfectly. Remember, I added 1 inch for the sleeve for stitching, and I also added 1 inch for the body for stitching. So I'm going to use that to stitch it down, and I'll repeat the same thing for the other side of the dress. So this is a final look of our dress. It looks pretty after stitching it down. This is how nice it looked. And I went ahead to hem the edge of these by folding in the allowance I added. So if you've watched the video to the end and you're not subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.